Welcome to the Tom Nelson podcast. Today I have Ronald Stein here. And Ronald, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ronald Stein. I'm a co-author of the Pulitzer Prize nominated book, Clean Energy Exploitations. I'm policy advisor on energy literacy for the Heartland Institute and for the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, and national TV commentator on energy and infrastructure with Rick Amato. And my website is energyliteracy.net.
Okay.
All my books, articles are on energyliteracy.net.
Okay. You are on Twitter too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn.
What should we start talking about?
We can talk about the definition of energy, because the confusion is, you read all this hype that renewable energy is going to replace fossil fuels. Well, there's two important facts you got to remember. That fossil fuels is totally useless unless it's manufactured into something usable. And when it goes through a refinery and gets heated and cracked, it makes a lot of oil derivatives that accounts for 6,000 products in our daily lives that we did not have before 1900, and the fuels for all the different infrastructures we have. Renewable energy, i.e. wind and solar, can only generate intermittent electricity from breezes and sunshine. Wind and solar can manufacture absolutely nothing for society. So until we find a clone to crude oil, there's no way to replace the derivatives that makes all the products in our daily lives. That's a foundation of energy.
In Germany, I guess, they're trying to run the country using wind and solar, but they need a big dose of fossil fuels over there right now.
Well, Germany was the first country to go green with wind and solar, and basically shutting down all their power plants and natural gas, coal power plants, nuclear power plants. And today, Germany has the most expensive electricity in the world. And right behind them is Australia, the UK, and California. Those are four, I want to call countries that have some of the most expensive electricity in the world. Because wind and solar, they have a nameplate rating, but the nameplate rating is a farce, because they can't generate it unless wind's blowing and the sun is shining. So they keep advertising they're adding all this nameplate rating, but they need backup. And you know where the backup is? It's fossil fuels. You need something continuous and uninterruptible. And yeah, so I think it's a pipe dream to think that wind and solar, I'm not going to bet my life on breezes and sunshine for survival. I live in California. We got basically temperate climate here, but if you're living in areas that are extremely hot or extremely cold, you don't want to depend on breezes and sunshine for your survival.
Right. I don't. I'm in Minnesota, and it gets cold here. Yeah.
Okay, it's going to get cold. Yes, because like I say, the transition to electrical generation from breezes and sunshine has proven to be ultra expensive for the wealthy countries. The wealthy countries being Germany, Australia, America, and these countries represent only 6% of the world's population, a little over 500 million versus the almost 8 billion people in the world. And these wealthy countries, as I mentioned, now have among the highest costs for their electricity, while the poor developing countries, currently without the usage of the 20th century products we get manufactured from crude oil, they're experiencing like 11 million child deaths per year due to the unavailability of the fossil fuel products. We have a medication in health industry that doesn't exist in developing countries. They talk about climate change is going to affect a lot of people. That's true, but it seems obvious that efforts to cease the use of crude oil could be the greatest threat to civilization's 8 billion people. Attempts to decarbonize the world like we had before 1800. Before 1800, there were no coal-fired power plants. There were no natural gas power plants. The Beverly Hillbillies hadn't discovered oil yet. And it would result in billions of fatalities for the 8 billion on Earth from diseases, malnutrition, weather-related deaths, versus the projected, I'm going to say, smaller millions of fatalities from climate change. Billions without oil is a lot greater than millions from climate change. Realistically, Thomas, there's no silver bullet answers to save the entire 8 billion population on this earth. An abundance of crude oil, the same oil that contributes to the world populated from 1 to 8 billion in less than 200 years. That's quite an achievement. But that's led to prosperity for all in the wealthy countries, while a restriction or lack of oil leads to economic struggle, poverty, shortages, and inflation to maintain current lifestyles and economies.
Yeah, so my stance is that the warming we've seen so far and additional CO2 in the air so far since 1850, I think that's been a net benefit to humanity. But the whole idea of trying to cut off fossil fuels would be way more of a danger to humanity than a little more warming from burning those fossil fuels. I think it's a much bigger threat. Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, because we have no clone to replace it. I'd love to replace fossil fuels, but before you jump out of an airplane, you should have a parachute that's working. And to abandon fossil fuels, we've had almost 200 years to clone it, and have been able to do it. To say that renewables is going to replace it, well, renewables only generate electricity. And if you really look hard at it, if we eliminate fossil fuels, we eliminate wind turbines, solar panels, and EVs, because wind turbines, solar panels, and EVs, all their parts are made with oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil. And so, it's, the only good thing about getting rid of crude oil is you would ground Air Force One.
There you go. I think, didn't Janet Yellen just say that we need to rid ourselves of oil and gas? I think she said that this week. Do I have that right?
She's cloning what Biden is saying, but again, he has no backup plan.
Right.
You can't have, electricity is not going to run the world. Electricity can charge your iPhone, but it can't make your iPhone. It can make the defibrillator in the hospital work, but it can't make the defibrillator. There's the infrastructures that we did not have before 1900. Everything changed in 1900. We invented the car, we invented the airplane, and we really started discovering what we could do with crude oil. And a lot of creativity came out of the hydrocarbon industry in developing, the plastics, the different fuels that helped win the wars. And there's, like I say, there's no turning back. Like I say, if you want to jump out of the airplane, make sure you cut a parachute before you do it. By getting rid of fossil fuels, you're shutting down, you're eliminating the medical industry, the electronic industry, the transportation industry, all the militaries go away. Look around your house, your office, the hospital, and identify what was not made from oil derivatives.
Interesting.
And to go back to the 1800s, that the life was short, and people very seldom traveled 100 miles from where they were born, and longevity was like 40 years old, and that was decarbonized society, and we're not going to go back there.
Do you know of any success story around the world where there's any modern factory or modern city that's powered only by wind and solar power? I don't know of anything like that. Is there?
Absolutely not, because all those facilities need continuous, uninterruptible power. And wind and solar cannot provide that. And so it's basically a redundant electrical generating system that needs stability to support it. And when you have two generating systems really at the cost of one that you had, electricity goes up, and shortages and inflation are going to be in perpetuity. Thomas, one of the things that people were not really giving consideration to, and a lot of it's because of Biden's big push of getting rid of fossil fuels, is the ESG movement, the environmental, social, and governance movement, divesting in fossil fuels. Well, the good news is working. The bad news is it's working, because what is happening in the entire world, there's 700 refineries. And refineries are useless unless they've got crude oil to manufacture into products. Now, of those 700 refineries, which were built when you could get a permit and build them, they're all old and they're getting very expensive to maintain. And the locals are saying, not my backyard. And so it's projected over the next 5 years of those 700 refineries, 20% will be shutting down.
Really? Okay.
That's 140 manufacturing facilities shutting down. Now, the demand's not going away for all the products. Everybody wants their iPads and they want, all the medications they're getting and et cetera, and the ability to travel all over the world. So demand is increasing. And what you're doing is you're reducing the ability to supply. So when you have high demand and short supply, it's easy. You've got shortages, inflation, and perpetuity.
Okay.
That's going to be the real hammer, and that's going to be, I think, a further downfall for the EV movement, because EVs are going to, like I say, EVs are expensive. The materials to make the EV are going to be shortage. You've heard of shortages of chips. Well, chips, plastics, and everything. And EVs are going to get more expensive, which is going to make them less attractive to the population. And that's something people really aren't looking at. And once these refineries shut down, there is probably never a chance of them coming back. And so I think that's the bigger problem for the society and the economy.
All right. So do you think this is really going to happen in California, the ban in new internal combustion cars? Is that going to really happen?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
And I'll tell you what, I think the auto industry has been mandated toward a death spiral. Let's take a look at that. When you take a look at the pieces of the EV puzzle, you have an extremely limited supply of lithium. And in fact, half of lithium is actually in Chile. It's actually controlled by the Chinese, but it's in Chile. Okay. And the locals said, hey, not my backyard. And the Supreme Court agreed and shut it down.
Okay.
In Europe, they're about, toward the end of this year, the first next year, about to classify lithium as health hazard.
Oh, okay.
And so the lithium mine in Germany is going to shut down. So the availability of lithium to make the batteries is disappearing. So it's going to be in short supply, and all the automobile manufacturers are looking for lithium. And so price of lithium is going to go up. And what's that going to do to the price of the EV? It's going to go up higher. Now you got a lack of sufficient buyers outside the elite profile. The profile of the EV owner, and especially take a look at California. California has almost half the EVs in the entire country. Of course, we got the most temperate climate. Never gets too hot, never gets too cold. And the rest of the country, the other 49 states, have the other 49%, which is kind of like 1% per state. They don't really care about it. And so you have, the profile of the buyer is highly educated, high income, multi-car family, homeowner, and limited mileage requirements. Because the EVs in California generally use about 5,000 miles a year. They drive it as much as they drive the Maseratis. Okay. And it's a backup, it's a toy. And then you got the shortage of inflation of the materials to supply the vehicles, which you mentioned, with these refineries shutting down. All cars are going to go up, and EVs can't afford to go up because they're out of reach right now. And then due to EV potential fires, there's a questionable means of how you're going to transport them to America. Because over the years, I think it was in America, we manufactured like 10 million vehicles. But when you take a look at China, India, Indonesia, Germany, they manufactured like 50 million cars. So all the manufacturing is going offshore, and all the automobile manufacturers are going to EVs. So by 2035, all they could be doing is manufacturing EVs. And I don't know if you read about it, but off the coast of the West Coast in March, there was a cargo ship that caught fire and burned for
yeah.
days and sank. And it had 4,000 cars on it. Cheap cars, Bentleys, Maseratis, Lamborghinis.
Really? Wow.
People waited years for these things.
Huh.
And the fire burned for days. The 12 crew members got off because of the burning. So, but it was either caused or contributed by an EV battery fire. And so now consider yourself Lloyd's of London. You're not going to be too excited about insuring the next cargo ship.
Right.
I mean, when these 4,000 cars went down, it was like $500 million to the bottom of the ocean. And then you got the concern about, where's the electricity going to come from? We keep shutting down, natural gas power plants. Newsom gave a lifeline to the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant for a couple of years because he needs the votes. But in a couple of years, Diablo comes down, and where's the electricity going to be available to charge the EVs? In fact, California went through a heat wave, and the warning was, turn your temperature up, et cetera, do all these things to save energy. And the last sentence was, don't charge your EV. So, I mean, the electricity is not going to be there to be available to charge your EV. And then the government, we wrote the book Clean Energy Exploitation because it was nominated for Pulitzer Prize. And it talks about bringing transparency to the fact that some of the wealthy countries that are going green, that require all these exotic minerals and metals like lithium and cobalt, et cetera, that are coming from developing countries. And these countries have no environmental laws, they got no labor laws, and they're exploiting people who have yellow skin, brown skin, black skin. And it's a moral issue. In fact, I personally have made a decision, I won't buy an EV. For ethical reasons. Because after writing the book, I know where the lithium is coming from, and I'm not willing to financially support the environmental degradation and humanitarian atrocities going on around the world. You've heard of blood diamonds?
Yes.
These are blood minerals. And so it's a sad situation. And the fact that, especially in California, half the state of California is Hispanic and African American. They're not highly educated. They're not high income people. They're not multi-car families, and and they don't have garages to park their cars in. In fact, because of the EV battery fires in the supply of electricity, the UK implemented in July, if you have an EV and a home charger, it has to be programmed to not operate 9 hours a day during peak load requirements.
Really?
And most importantly, your EV charger is on a separate meter. Because the UK knows they're going to have to rebuild their grid. And who's going to pay for it? The EV owners.
Very interesting.
Their electricity rates are going to be humongous. So yeah, there's a lot of dark clouds on the EV market. So it's nice that Newsom can talk about this, but it ain't gonna happen. I was in Newport Beach over the weekend, and everybody is parked on the streets, and I'm envisioning, my God, if these are EVs, how are they going to charge them? And then I'm thinking, well, there'll be extension cords laying everywhere, and if there's extension cords laying everywhere, they happen to be made of copper. So they'll be stealing, extension cords and take advantage of the copper. It's a disaster. And so
I have several questions that have been building up here. I didn't want to derail you. One is, in California, how is it going over this whole idea of getting rid of internal combustion cars? Do people think that it's going to happen? Do they believe it, that they're going to be able to charge them, given that they can't even charge the ones they already have? Is that coming up a lot? Like if we have whatever 10 times as many?
You had multiple questions, and the answer is no.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
No, people are not going to do it. And I think, like I say, by 2035, it's interesting. The auto industry, personally, I'm an engineer, and I think the hybrid was the greatest thing we ever came up with. It's electric and gas. But the auto industry has been mandated to not make hybrids.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
because they've been mandated to reduce the emissions from what they're manufacturing. And the only way they can meet those targets is to eliminate that gasoline engine, which is part of a hybrid. There's a handful of hybrids, but they're going to be disappearing because in the future it's going to be 100% EV or nothing. I think the hybrid would be great because you double your gas mileage instantaneously, and it buys us another 50 years to develop battery technology, because power for a cell phone is a small power requirement. But when you look at a large power requirement, the Tesla battery weighs 1,000 pounds.
Yes, good point.
The Ford 150 that Biden's all excited about, its battery is 1,600 pounds. And the Hummer, the Macho Hummer, has an EV. Its battery is over almost 5,000 pounds. It's a 10,000 pound tank.
So off the top of your head, do you know the weight of a car, a Tesla or something with an EV with a big battery versus a similar car, but it's just got a regular internal combustion engine? Do you know the difference in weight between those two choices?
I don't know the percentage, but I know that EVs are heavier cars.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, you're right. They're heavier cars and actually putting more stress on the roads and not paying any taxes to maintain the roads.
Yeah, I've heard more stress on the roads and more stress on the tires, and they're causing pollution because the little bits of tire are flying off. I've heard something about that. Does that sound right? The tires wear out because the vehicle's heavier. Yeah.
Right. Well, like the Hummer, you've got a 10,000 pound tank.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah, it's going to be a disaster, and I think the public they're not ready for it. Okay. Yeah, they just write it off because it's hard for them to think a year in advance, let alone anything else.
Okay. My next question was about fires. That I think I've seen something about how at some apartment complexes you cannot park your EV underground because they're worried it's going to catch fire and burn the building down. I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
In Germany, some of the cities have issued mandates that you cannot park your EV in an underground structure because of it. Yep. When an EV battery ignites, it's a chemical fire. You can't put it out. All you can do is cool it. And it takes like 30,000 gallons. And to get 30,000 gallons in an underground location, it's going to be horrendous. In fact, General Motors, they recalled all their EVs and had to do some modifications to the batteries. And when they returned them to the owners, they had safety recommendations. Basically, don't park it near anything that you really want to keep, and when you charge it, don't leave it unattended.
Oh, duh. Really? Okay.
So, yeah, no, that's coming. In fact, there's a website that tracks EV fires, Tesla fires.
Okay.
And I think the last time I looked at, there was 95, and they just self-ignite.
Okay.
So yeah, you're gonna see that. Then you can't park it. And if you park it in your garage, if it ignites, it could burn your house down.
Right. Now, I've seen horror stories where I think maybe a Tesla is caught on fire and they've had a crew of people think they put it out and then it starts up again. Have you heard anything about that? And then another one is electric buses. I've seen some footage of electric buses where they're going up and there's just flames shooting out of both sides of the bus. It just looks like a rocket taking off. Are those real?
Right. Those are real.
Those are real fires. Yeah.
Those are actual fires. I've got photos of those. But I think the greatest thing, this will go viral because, and I forget where it is, but they have a fire engine that they made an EV.
Oh, okay.
And that'd be a great article. I mean, when that EV ignites and the fire department can't put out the fire, that would be the end of the EVs.
Do you know, I don't know technically what is causing these fires? What's happening when they go up so fast?
Well, it's the chemical reaction. You look back when people were taking their boards on airplanes that had EV batteries and they were igniting. Airlines won't allow EV batteries, to come on the plane. But it's interesting. They don't want EV batteries on the airplane, but the government says it's okay to have an EV battery in your house, or in your garage, infrastructure, and so there's mixed signals out there, but it's
Okay.
not, there's not a lot of good news for EV futures.
One other question I had, my last one here in this stretch, is how about the lithium supply in Afghanistan? Someone else I was talking to said there's a lot of lithium in Afghanistan. Does that sound right to you? Or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
There
Lithium,
is.
they got billions. The Chinese have that under control.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, China controls most of the lithium supply in the world, and which is a good national security issue.
Okay, yeah, another one.
You want to go green, and China controls all that, and it's like I say, when and if China ever gets pissed off at America, they can really clamp down on this.
Okay.
But yeah,
all right.
Afghanistan does have it. And there's basically the Salton Sea in California is supposed to have a lot of lithium, but lithium is strip mining. And Thomas, strip mining, it's the dirtiest operation around. And the climate reduction, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden signed with great fanfare, there's clauses in there that if you want to qualify for your EV subsidy, the lithium has to be mined in America. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
What environmentalists have you ever seen any pictures of this? The strip mining of lithium is atrocious. It affects the water supply. It affects the health of the people exposed to the lithium, and and it's a disaster.
Okay. Do you think that's some sort of a loophole right there that might kind of destroy this whole idea of us trying to go entirely with EVs? That one loophole, is that a big deal?
Well, I think it's obviously going to affect the sales because if right now the people taking advantage of the subsidies are the elites, and if you take the subsidy away because they don't qualify for it because lithium's not made here, it's going to affect the sales at that end, and so the lower class of people, they're never going to qualify, and so it's I as an engineer, I see this as obvious. Just coming to a hard end for the auto industry, and that's going to be atrocious for the world because the whole world is driven by the auto industry. It employs so many people and so much manufacturing, and it's taken them years to basically ramp up to build EVs, and it would take them years to go back to gasoline cars, and they don't have the funds to do it. So the government would have to fund it. And it's going to be a disaster. So
it does seem to me like an opening for politicians to easily push back against the whole idea that the non-elite should pay to subsidize the Teslas for the Silicon Valley people. It seems like that's a no-brainer to push back against that.
Well, I think the subsidies is basically a way of, like I mentioned, I won't buy an EV because I think it's financially supporting this environmental degradation of developing countries. Subsidies are basically encouraging this environmental degradation to continue in those countries. And so I think it's an ethical and moral issue to even offer a subsidy. So we'll see as time is marching on. I think it's going to become very obvious that they're basically making widgets, and where's the buyer for the widgets?
How do you see, looking ahead, I know it's hard to predict the future, but how do you see sanity coming back and people not trying to go entirely with EVs? Is it going to take a while, or what's going to happen here, do you think?
Thomas, from that movie, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it any longer.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for a decade, that the people that are basically taking it in the shorts by paying these high electricity rates because wind and solar, can't do anything, they're the ones that are getting hit with inflation and shortages. The people that have the big bucks, if you have $100 to put in your gas tank, it's no problem. But if you're flipping burgers, you're in trouble because you're trying to put food on the table and pay utilities and pay rent and, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that I'm so amazed at is it seems like all of government is bought into this bubble that they believe in, and then the poor public that's taking it in the shorts keeps reelecting the same people. So but at some point in time, people are going to say, "I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it any longer." Good. You see in California, because prices are very expensive here, And you see a lot of, break-ins and, the crash and grabs, smash and grabs. And I think it's a sign of people are becoming desperate. The
Right.
homeless population in California is increasing because we got the highest cost of electricity, highest cost of fuel. And Biden is doing, Newsom's doing everything possible to increase both of them. And so
Right.
it's crazy. And it doesn't make any logic, but everybody is in government. If you don't believe in this, we're going to rid the world of fossil fuels, we're not invited to the party.
Right.
And so it's an elite group of people that are all talking the same thing. And if you talk about any logic, well, you're a denier, and so you're not invited to the party. But whenever I give a presentation on energy, I don't like to give a presentation as much as I have a conversation.
Okay. All right.
And I have like over 50 questions that I share with the moderator, share with the audience, because most people are intimidated to ask an intelligent question about energy because it's so complicated. And so if you want to ask a question about, wind or EVs or, whatever, I provide them the question so they can stand up and ask an intelligent question.
Okay, good.
And to get the conversation going, because I don't want to make a presentation about something they don't want to hear about.
Right.
If the audience is only there because they want to being pressured to buy an EV, the whole conversation might be about EVs. I don't know, but it's really got to be a conversation. And anytime Biden gives a speech, the press doesn't do anything. All they do is transcribe it. They don't question them.
Right.
If you say we're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, hey, we're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. Right. And so it's got to be a conversation.
Okay.
And just like you've got questions, I'm trying to answer them.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's got to be, because just giving a speech that the world's going to come to an end because of fossil fuels, I have a lot of faith in humanity's ingenuity. I mean, we've developed the ability to survive any weather condition. Weather-related deaths have been eliminated by 98%. Because we got clothing, for the heat and the cold. We got air conditioning, we got heating, and we got medical industry, and it's just amazing, the ingenuity. And I was in Newport Beach over the weekend, and I was noticing the tide changing, and high tide, low tide. And just out of curiosity, in Newport Beach, the tide varies 6 feet from high tide to low tide because of gravity. Pull from the moon and the sun. And so I was looking, where's the really big tidal changes? And up in Alaska, between high tide and low tide, it's 40 feet.
Is it?
40 feet.
I did not know that. Okay.
40. I mean, you can watch it go up, you can watch it go down, but and like I said, there's a lot of power from the Earth and Earth, moon, and the sun. And I take a look at climate change. Well, climate's been changing for 4 billion years. And I think the last ice age, the ice was south of St. Louis. And when it retreated from a warming cycle, and by the way, Thomas, there was nobody living on Earth during the warming cycle. And there was no fossil fuels, whatever. The Great Lakes were developed. And the great, Lake Michigan, et cetera. And those Great Lakes, unbelievably, they contain 20% of the fresh water in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing.
20% of the fresh water in the world is in those Great Lakes from the melting glaciers. And you take a look at the Grand Canyon, it was developed from melting glaciers. And I know exactly how many people lived here then.
Yeah.
Nobody. I don't think the dinosaurs were farting that much.
I bet not.
So,
okay.
And so, we've gone through, a lot of ice ages, and we've gone through a lot of warming cycles. And all those warming cycles have occurred when nobody lived here.
Yeah.
And so, when you take a look at these wealthy countries that represent, 6% of the world, the UK and Australia and America, it's ridiculous to think that they're going to affect anything.
Mhm.
There's a lot of power from the sun and its activities and
Right, right.
the moon, and yeah, so it's trying to how do you prevent the next hurricane? Yeah, Mother Nature's going to take care of that.
Absolutely. Do you think the whole thing in Germany, if it blows up energy-wise, people have a hard time heating their homes, et cetera, do you think that's going to throw a pall over the whole green agenda and make people rethink it around the world? I have some hope for that, but
Definitely. In fact, this winter is going to be a real tough winter on a lot of European
yeah,
countries, primarily because of the Russian-Ukraine war, because it became very apparent that everybody's dependent on Russia,
yes.
for natural gas and
Mhm.
oil. And in some of these countries are now depending on breezes and sunshine for their survival. I think a combination of the two, depending on breezes and sunshine and being cut off
Right.
from gas and oil from Russia, I think you're going to see a real tough winter for a lot of those civilians
Right.
over there.
And what the Greens are trying to say, though, is the problem in Germany is that they didn't put up enough wind turbines and solar panels, right? That's what they're
Well,
trying to say. But
again, I've been talking to one of the state senators. He's trying to put some clamps on the wind and solar. I said, well, penalize them for not delivering the power. They promote, they got nameplate rating, but the nameplate rating is useless. If you got a nameplate rating of a coal-fired power plant or a natural gas power plant or a nuclear power plant, they're going to crank out about 95% of what they
yeah.
are rated at annually. But when you take it wind and solar, you give them all these subsidies to do a nameplate rating, and they produce, like 1 to 5% per year. And I'm saying, well, hey, penalize them if they can't
Mhm.
produce the power that they're being approved for. Penalize them.
Yeah. What term do you use for that 1 to 5%? Or sometimes I hear 13%. So you take the nameplate rating, but then you have to divide.
Nameplate rating.
You start with nameplate rating, but what is it? What's the real energy you get? Not the nameplate rating, but the real energy you actually do get. Do you call
Well,
that the capacity factor or
well, it's really just the actual energy.
actual energy? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, like I say, you see all these things. Oh, we're putting 100 megawatts of wind turbines in. Well, you're not getting any power out of it. You're just
Yeah.
installing them. Yeah, and they require a lot of materials. And right now, both solar panels and wind turbines are lasting maybe 20 years, and we haven't found a way to recycle.
Mhm.
I mean, Australia's got a lot of wind turbines. They're piling them up in toxic waste dumps. These old turbines.
Yeah. So
And
we're seeing these photos of huge dumps where they're using bulldozers to bury the old wind turbines. That's
right,
the solution. That's what they're doing.
that's right.
Yeah.
Can't see them. It's okay.
Yeah. Wow. And I just thought of another question before we go on. You mentioned ESG. I heard a part of a podcast from Marty Bent talking about ESG, and he says that there's some signs that that's starting to fail now because there's so much extra cost in investing in ESG, and the returns are not that good, and investors are starting to sour on it. Are you hearing that at all?
Definitely, yes. There's a lot of states that are basically issuing laws against ESG.
Okay, that's great news, isn't it? Yeah.
It's great news because how do you give banks basically the power to set energy policy?
Mhm.
And basically that's what they're doing.
Right.
They're picking winners and losers. They pick the loser being fossil fuels, so don't invest in that and invest in wind turbines and solar panels. And so it's as you see more and more of this lack of wind and solar to being able to deliver, and the cost and shortages and inflation going up, that's I call the ESG factor. Like I said,
Okay.
as I mentioned it earlier, the good news is ESG is working. The bad news is ESG is working.
Okay. Yeah. But if it's starting to fail, I'm taking some. I'm taking heart. I enjoy hearing that.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
it's affecting people's wallets, and
Yeah.
you can't do that. Crude oil, like I mentioned earlier, its
Mhm.
uselessness is manufacturing something usable because the world populated from 1 to 8 billion in 200 years,
Mhm.
and because of all the products and medications and technology. I mean, take COVID. I mean, I said Fortunately, it happened at this period of time because we have the technology to work remote and educate remote. Thomas, if it happened 10 years ago, it would have shut the world down because you couldn't have a Zoom meeting. It didn't even exist. And so the fact that those 6,000 products and all of the infrastructures that exist today, water treatment and water storage and dams and airlines, today there's like 50,000 jets in the world and 50,000 merchant ships in the world, moving products all over the world. And now we have 8 billion people. We need those to keep those people alive. And if you get rid of fossil fuels, you're going to be back to sailboats. And there'll be no airplanes. That's going to be devastating to humanity.
So I'm seeing these articles now saying, hey, we've got this new great idea to prevent bad weather. We're going to use sails on our ships. I'm actually seeing that. That's so crazy to me.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was Ben Franklin in his lifetime. He sailed back and forth to the UK 8 times.
Yeah.
That's amazing because each time took like a couple months.
Yes. Yeah.
And plus, seasickness and, bad food and, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost unfathomable that Ben Franklin was able to survive that.
Yeah.
But sailboats is, like I say, it would totally change humanity.
By the way, do you know how long it takes now for a container ship to go across the Atlantic? I don't even know. I wonder.
Powered?
Yeah.
Usually about a week. I know
it is.
California, Newsom is basically following Biden, get rid of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And California is the only state in America that imports oil.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Back in 95, we imported 5% between Alaska's production and California's in-state production. We were pretty much self-sufficient. We had about 95% of our crude oil needs from that to meet the demands of society. And because of Governors Brown and Schwarzenegger and now Newsom, they keep wanting to cut back in-state production, and they've been successful.
Have they? Okay.
So we used to import 5%. Today we import 58%.
Really? Okay.
And California is an energy island because when Trump was president and America was a net oil exporter because of fracking in the Midwest, California has zero access to that oil. And the reason being, there's no pipelines over the Sierra Mountains.
Okay.
The only way to get that oil from the Midwest to California is through the Panama Canal.
Really? Okay.
And it's cheaper to bring it in from Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
So, in fact, with the price of oil today, that's costing California about $150 million a day. Every day, we're sending to oil-rich foreign countries. And the interesting thing is these oil tankers, they use a bunker fuel. It's a really low-grade fuel because they need so much of it. And the emissions of these tankers, the annual emissions of tankers that are crossing the ocean to bring that oil to California, their annual emissions exceed the entire mobile fleet of California.
Very interesting. Okay.
And so Newsom, he lives in a bubble. I always joke, but I think I'm believing it more and more. He only breathes California air. Okay. He doesn't breathe anybody else's air. So it's okay to move the emissions somewhere else as long as his bubble is pure. Okay. And so he's trying to purify his bubble. And that's why, he's wanted to ban gasoline cars. His bubble will be pure. That's okay if we manufacture those cars in countries that have no environmental controls, because he doesn't breathe that air. Another funny thing is, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District wants 2 other refineries in Northern California to become a little cleaner. Okay. And now we're talking California. We got the cleanest refineries in the whole world. of those 700 refineries in the world, we got the cleanest ones.
Okay.
And the Air Quality Management District in the Bay Area wants the two refineries, Chevron and PBF, to reduce their particulate emissions. Because they calculated that there was 12 kids having asthma attacks that they can save. And to do that, both refineries would have to spend in excess of $1 billion.
Okay.
And both have said, we have to do this, we're out of here. And now it's in the courts.
Okay.
And if it survives the courts, these refineries are shutting down. Now, if they shut down, now you get into the real nitty gritty. Chevron and PBF are the only two refineries in Northern California that manufacture aviation fuel for the international airports at San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento, San Jose, and the entire military in Northern California.
Okay.
So when those refineries shut down, if the air community gets their way, that aviation fuel comes from China.
Okay. I thought you were going to say that. Okay.
So, but, and like I say, the fact that, we might have, thousands of people dying in China from air pollution because they have no environmental controls, that's okay.
Right.
We're going to clean up our bubble.
So how is California air quality now versus 1970s? If you measure particulates or whatever, it has to be better.
It's much better. When you take a look at the Industrial Revolution, the first automobiles, they were smokers. The first refineries were smokers.
Right.
But you get the technology and you can pretty much, clean up the act. Now the cars are cleaner, they're more efficient. Refineries, when you drive by and you see all this quote smoke coming, it's steam.
Yes. Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
And like I say, the refineries around the world have become much, much more efficient. And I think that's the thing we've got to focus on, efficiency and conservation. And we'll maintain the quality of air we have.
Another question I have is, do they still have oil seeps off the coast of Santa Barbara?
They had the oil spill off of Santa Barbara, and big thing. You can't drill in the ocean, but you're right. There is natural seepage,
right?
But they don't recognize that as oil leakage because it's natural. You can't control it. But the natural seepage has exceeded the oil spill tenfold.
Right. But nobody cares. Nobody cares, right?
But the interesting thing is we have a lot of oil offshore, but with technology, you don't have to drill in the ocean to get it. You drill on land and you slant drill to get it. All the drilling would be on land, but Newsom, you can't get a permit to drill anything here. So, so it's sitting there, but we can't get it.
I'm curious. I have no idea. If you're on land, how far out can you slant drill? How far? Miles out there.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's pretty efficient. So it would be great to control our destiny because we're the 7th largest economy in the world, and we're dependent on foreign countries for our oil. We're dependent on China basically to go green with these EVs. And, no one talks about national security.
So here's a dumb question. Can they turn corners when they're slant drilling, or it has to be a straight drill? How does this technology work? They can't drill down and drill off to the side? Can they do that?
Well, what they do, they come down and then they just make a turn and go out.
So they can make turns?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. How do they do that? How do they make turns?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That's an industry. I follow them, but I don't know the technical.
That's really impressive. Yeah. Okay. Is there any fracking going on in California?
A little bit, but Newsom's trying to shut it all down. He's trying to shut down all oil production. The existing oil producing wells, he wants basically a setback of like 3,000 feet from schools or housing. And, when you do that, because California's so populated, you're going to shut down most of the oil production in California. And when you do that, I mentioned we were importing 58%. Well, that's going to increase. I mentioned it was costing $150 million a day. That's going to increase.
Right.
But that's okay because Newsom's going to clean up his little bubble.
Right. Do you think he's doing this to clean up the air mostly, or do you think he's doing it because he wants to prevent bad weather? Because carbon dioxide causes bad weather. I'm curious.
Well, I don't know. It's just a personal thing. When I look at Newsom and Biden, I look at Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
So I, you know, I it's discouraging, but I firmly believe he believes it.
Yeah.
He has no understanding.
Mhm.
And he's obviously not an engineer, and neither is Biden.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and they've got a lot of advisors, but like I say, the advisors, you're not invited to the advisory committee unless you believe in what they believe in.
Right. Okay.
I mean, if you believe that there's a way to drill cost effectively, you won't be invited to the advisory committee.
This is more of a global question, but in terms of people who are trying to shut down fossil fuels, do you think they're more stupid than evil? I'm curious.
At this point in time, I think it's verging towards stupidity.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's an evil intent. I think it's a lack of understanding. And I think the lack of understanding really starts with the definition of energy. They keep talking about renewable energy. Thomas, it's not renewable energy, it's only renewable electricity.
Yes. Okay.
And electricity, like I say, you can't do anything with electricity unless you have fossil fuels, because we know iPad's the power. We know defibrillators the power. And like I say, if you really get rid of crude oil, you're going to get rid of wind turbine solar panels, because all of the plastics and little electronics to make them work are made with oil derivatives. So it's a vicious cycle, and there is no silver bullet answer. I think there's a place for EVs, and I mean, people that have limited mileage requirements, hey, fine, but most people need a workhorse. And over the years, people have moved from sedans to EVs. I mean, to SUVs, and the cars have gotten bigger, so they could take the whole family. But you take an EV and you make an EV into an SUV. Whoa! Now you got a bigger car, you got a bigger battery, and a bigger price tag. And so, yeah, to change the lifestyle of people, I think 94% of the world that's developing could benefit from joining the Industrial Revolution, and benefiting from the products that are available from crude oil. And you would, like I say, eliminate, or you could reduce the child fatalities that are happening, because there's so much poor going on in the world that it's really terrible. I mean, in India, I would think they would want to have these national conventions in some of these poor countries, but they don't, because there's nobody to land those private jets.
Okay.
But it's appalling that some of these people can barely put food on the table for one day.
Right.
In fact, in our book, Clean Energy Exploitations, we debated, my co-author, Todd Royal, about what to use for the cover. And we used the cover from a photograph from Africa. It's a guy with an Uzi overlooking the mining.
Oh, really?
A family of, mining for the stuff by hand. And that's what's going on over there. And like I said, that's why I won't buy an EV, because I know where the lithium is coming from, and I'm not willing to support that.
Very interesting. Before I forget, did you happen to see Andrew Dessler's appearance on Joe Rogan? Climate scientist Andrew Dessler. He was on Rogan, I believe, and he was talking all this crazy stuff about, of course, we can use wind turbines and solar panels to power our economy. It was incredibly clueless. It went on for a long time. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's only electricity, and I know the UK. They are heavy into wind turbines, and they had a wind vacation over there. Wind pretty much shut down for 2 weeks, and like I say, it's only electricity. That's the thing that I wish Biden and Newsom could understand, that wind and solar can only produce electricity.
But it's only electricity, but it's not even that, right?
It's intermittent. Yeah,
It's not even that.
yeah, it's unreliable.
Yeah.
And
So
they can manufacture absolutely nothing for society.
good point. Are you open to doing any debates, either in person or online, with the people like Andrew Dessler? I would love to see you debate this stuff with him.
I would love to. I mean, I would love to have, a debate with AOC. She makes statements, but I would just, like to ask her the questions. And it's got to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And,
have you done any debates at all yet?
I have not with anybody that has, I guess, the power of the microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because AOC, she got the microphone, whatever she says, it's printed. But it has to be a debate and let the audience.
I would love to get Andrew Dessler on here and do a debate with you. I'd love to see that, but
I'd love
probably
to
wishful thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, just invite him, and then
Yeah, I will invite him. We'll see what happens.
At the last minute, hey, we have Ron Stein. Well, what you're talking about EVs, in summary of what I was talking about, all the dark clouds on the EV market, in summary, the passion of a few wealthy countries to achieve zero emissions at any cost, it's going to face major supply chain issues of lithium and supply chain issues for the body parts, affordability, safety from spontaneous fires, availability and affordability of electricity from breezes and sunshine, and the ethical challenges that are exploiting folks in poor countries. Just for the elites to drive an EV manufactured by the few that can survive the government mandated death spiral. It's I don't have a lot of faith as the years come by. 2035 is not that far away.
It's not, no.
And like I say, you're seeing, well, I drive a sedan, and you're seeing less and less sedans because everybody wants an SUV. But all the EVs are sedans because they're the lightest cars that they can make. And very few SUVs or EVs. Out of curiosity, I was leasing a Mercedes-Benz 450 SL. That's a two-door convertible.
Okay.
And it was time to go back to a sedan. It was getting hard to get in and out of the damn thing.
Okay.
And so, I qualify for an EV buyer, being highly educated, high income.
Okay.
And so I went on the Mercedes website, and I said, okay, my four-door sedan as an EV, and it's stickered out at 112.
Really? Wow.
I said, holy crap. And so I looked at the four-door sedan as a gasoline car. It was 50,000 less. And so I said, whoa, okay, now my 450 SL, it was on a lease for 3 years. And so with the mileage I was getting and the price of fuel, I figured over the 3-year period, I would spend $5,000 for fuel. So I was working out with my personal trainer, and I said, do I really want to spend an extra 50,000 so I could save 5,000? He said, Ron, you buy that EV, I'm going to kick your ass.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that.
So I bought my car, gasoline sedan. So, but it was out of curiosity.
So,
like I say, it's ridiculous.
So if you were to buy that $112,000, whatever was $112,000 EV, would you get it $7,500 subsidy from the little people?
Of course.
Not? You would.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is insane. I think.
Right. It's stupid. Yeah.
Right.
For the people that can afford it, they don't need a subsidy to encourage them to do it. And again, that subsidy is just encouraging that environmental degradation going on around the world.
I mean, what percent of the households in California can afford a car that costs $112,000? Is it more than I think? Maybe it is.
It's a single digit number.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And like I say, that's, I live in the Irvine area, the Irvine, Newport, Silicon Valley. That's where all the EVs are. You go to the poor locations, you don't see an EV.
Yeah. I mean, do ordinary people, I guess you already answered that question, people that have an actual job and they only have one vehicle, what percent of the time is that one vehicle a pure EV? It's almost never, is it?
Never.
Yeah.
It's like I say, it's just a market, and that's one of the clouds. Where are the buyers?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're only making them, and you know, if they manufactured Coca-Cola in 72-ounce containers, no one would buy it.
Yeah.
You gotta have it in containers that they can afford and that type of thing. And so it's crazy. Like I say, it's effectively they're being mandated to do this
Right. Right.
because they got to reduce the emissions of
Mm.
what they're manufacturing. And the only way to do that is eliminate the gasoline car. Like I say, there's a shortage of supply of the lithium materials, lithium and cobalt, and all the chips. They're all coming from China, and I'm not a big promoter of EVs because I think it's going to be a death spiral for the auto industry.
Do you have any thoughts on where Tesla's going as a company? Like 10 years from now, how are they going to be doing?
Well, he's making his money, off of rebates and tax credits and that type of thing. Musk is a genius. If anybody survives, he might be the only survivor.
Okay.
I think all the others, Mercedes and Audi, BMW, Honda, everybody's going to EVs. I don't think they're going to make it.
Yeah, but if Tesla had to compete just straight up against gasoline powered cars, straight up, no subsidies, they wouldn't be able to do it, right?
Well,
I don't think.
if most people buy a car for necessity,
Yes.
and and like I say, you buy what you can afford.
Mhm.
I'd love to live in a $20 million house, but
Right.
the reality is I can't afford that.
Mhm.
That's the same type of thing. I look at the cars in some of these communities that have Hispanic and African Americans, and they're all old vehicles, and I'm thinking they probably can't afford a piece of crap that they have. Now you're
Right.
going to say you have to buy an EV, Tom, it ain't gonna
Yeah.
happen.
I think I've read that the age of the average car on the road in the US is 12 years, I think. Your battery's not going to last 12 years, is it? If you buy a brand new EV, you're going to have to
No.
replace the battery at least once and maybe more.
Well, you bring up another issue that the auto industry has survived on the resale market.
Yeah.
Because you can always buy a used gasoline
Mhm.
car because they last for 50 years or more. But no one's going to buy a used EV
Mhm.
because the batteries basically degrade daily. I mean, after 10 years, they can't even get you the
Yeah.
mileage range that you bought it for. And then with technology changes, if you have to replace the battery, well, they're probably not making that battery anymore.
Right.
And so, so I don't think there is a resale market for the EV industry, and that is the auto industry, the resale industry.
Well, I wish I had this tweet in front of me, but there was just a tweet in the last month out there where somebody posted a receipt for a new battery on some normal EV. It wasn't even a Tesla. And I thought the new battery cost might have been $28,000. Have you heard anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
You saw that? Yeah. So that was real?
That was real.
That was real.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think the battery was it had to come from a third party or something, and and batteries are like wind turbine solar panels.
Yeah.
We haven't, it contained a Tesla battery has 25 pounds of lithium in a 1,000-pound battery, and right now there's not an economic way to recycle them yet.
Okay.
And so right now when your flashlight battery craps out, what do? You throw it in the trash can.
Right.
What do you do with your 1,000-pound Tesla battery? You need a couple guys from your next door neighbor to help you put it in the trash can.
This reminds me, how about this whole thing? It may have been 10 years ago or more, where Tesla was getting money based on the idea that you could just drive into a bay somewhere and automatically swap out the battery with one that was already charged. A robot was going to take out your Tesla battery and put in a charged battery. And do you know about this? Because I think it was a complete crock and it never happened since then. But I think they were getting money based on the idea that they could do that. And I haven't heard a thing about it for years now.
Let me give you an analogy. I was driving my Mercedes and one of my headlights went out. It's an LED light. And so you don't have to take it in for service. You go in the drive-through and they basically take it right there. But it took them 10 minutes to get to the damn thing.
Right.
He pulls it out. He says, here, go to supply, buy a new one. We'll put it in. So just to replace a light bulb, it took them, I think, a half an hour. to replace a light bulb. And
Right.
they're gonna exchange a battery
They were.
with all the connections and
I think that was
all,
amazing that was supposed to be happening, and now it just went away. I don't know, but
yeah. Another great theory.
all right. Let's see. Yeah. So getting back to this $28,000 battery, there can't hardly be any ordinary households in the whole country who would just say, okay, I'm going to pay another 28,000 for a new battery for my car. That's totally cost prohibitive. Yeah.
Just take it out of petty cash.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's amazing it's gotten as far as it has, but
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think we're going to be the vintage car capital of the world.
Vintage cars.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, just like Cuba, you go down to Cuba, you see all the cars from the 1940s, 1950s.
oh, do you? Okay.
Oh yeah, they're classics down there.
Okay.
And
right.
That's what we're gonna have, because the way the law is in California, you can't buy a gasoline car in California. You can buy it in Arizona,
Okay.
but you can't buy it in California. And the Air Resources Board has no control over registration, so you just buy your car in Arizona and you register it here.
Okay.
So unless all the states buy into this concept of not buying a gasoline car, it's people work around it.
Okay. So maybe that'll happen, that people will be driving cars that are 40 plus years old. Okay. Didn't think about that.
But like I say, the fact it's so far away, people aren't paying attention to it.
Yeah.
I was talking to my gardener, because they're banning gasoline blowers and that type of thing. Oh. And he doesn't care about that. The reason being, no, he says, because when he buys equipment, it'll last, for 10 years. So just before they ban it, he'll buy new equipment that's going to last 10 years.
Yeah.
And he'll retire before it craps out.
Okay.
So it doesn't affect him.
Nice. So, it was too bad, though, that Obama wrecked all those engines in cash for clunkers. There was those, I don't know if you saw videos. They had the whole cash for clunkers thing where they were pouring something into the engine to wreck these perfectly good engines. Bad that he did that, but because those engines they'd still be working right now, wouldn't they? It hasn't been that long ago.
Either that, or like I say, they ship them down to developing countries. Developing countries, they get used airplanes, like used cars, but there's, when you take a look at the poor people in this world, I think there are billions of people that are barely making $10 an hour. That's atrocious. Yeah, and they don't have enough money to subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. Okay. So obviously they're not going to subsidize wind and solar. If you take the US, the UK, Germany, Australia, wipe them off the face of the earth. Every person manufacturing, just eliminate them. You know what's going to happen to emissions? Emissions are going to explode. Oh, okay. Because of China, India, and Africa. But they got thousands of coal-fired power plants. They're building thousands more. That's right. Because they need, from the basics, they need electricity for their people, and coal is available. It's abundant. It's inexpensive, and and they've got no environmental regulations. And so, like I say, I call it the clean bubbles of the wealthy countries. We think we're going to basically save the world. And you can eliminate the US, the UK, Australia, Germany, China, India, and Africa. They're going to be polluting, but we don't breathe that air. Remember that. Yeah. So is it your sense that the people who are running the Chinese economy, whoever they are, they do not believe in the climate scam? It seems to me like they don't. I think they're intelligent con artists. When you take a look at the anti-fracking, movement that was going on here, part of the anti-fracking movement was funded by Russia. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. Yeah, because Putin, he's pretty intelligent. He's a war historian. He knows that the country that controls oil and natural gas controls the world. I mean, that's basically the major reason that the U.S. won the World Wars I and II. Germany, they didn't have the access to oil to move their planes and troops and everything else. And besides us being a little bit more intelligent, but the lack of energy was a downfall to them. Now China has pretty much no crude oil, so China is not going to be a major force in a war, and all our war as we know it. they're going to be involved in an economic war. And like I say, with them controlling all the exotic minerals and metals to go green, and controlling a lot of the manufacturing because they have cheap labor, slave labor, and no environmental controls. The world is pretty much a lot dependent on China, and China could probably win the war without firing a rifle.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting though that China does not have much access to their own crude oil. But how about coal? Do they have much coal, or they're buying a lot from Australia?
A lot of coal.
They have a lot of coal.
Yeah, they got thousands of coal-fired power plants, and they're building the equivalent of about one coal-fired power plant a day.
Are they burning their own coal, or are they shipping a lot of it in from elsewhere? That's my question.
No, they're burning their own.
Their own. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But fracking is not going to be much of a thing in China. They just don't have. They don't have the assets. They don't have it.
Nothing to frack. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And they don't have much of their own lithium either, I guess, huh?
No. Like I said, most of it's elsewhere.
Yes. Okay.
They got the technology, and so they went into Afghanistan and maintained control of that. And in Chile, I mean, they're going to be running that operation.
Okay.
But the locals got the Supreme Court to agree and shut that down. So, yeah, the Chinese they're pretty intelligent, and when America was a net exporter, that did not make Putin very happy because Putin wants the U.S. to be dependent on him. It was interesting because when they hacked when the Russians hacked that pipeline on the East Coast, and it pretty much shut down the East Coast, I said to my friends, "That's the best thing that's ever happened to America." Biden wanted to get rid of crude oil. He just did.
Great idea. There was this whole idea, I think, in 2008 from Tom Friedman about green China, about how they're going to show us how to run their economy on wind turbines and solar panels. But they are doing that a little bit, right? But maybe it's just for show. They're putting up some wind turbines and solar panels, but they're not trying to run their economy in any way.
Exactly.
I don't think.
Exactly. It's kind of like talking on both sides of the mouth. They big hoopla, we're putting up, wind turbines, and the world gets all excited. Hey, China's going green, Yeah. And then at the same time, they start building more coal-fired power plants.
So do you think they're deliberately doing that just to try to sell the idea that look at us? They're doing that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're buying into it 100% too. If you get a chance to have a conversation with quote the other side, we'd be delighted to participate.
Okay, yeah, I would love to see that. That would be great.
And ask them, some questions that, I was looking at the rocket launch that's coming up in a couple of weeks, Cape Canaveral. That rocket going to the moon, sitting on the ground, weighs 4.4 million pounds.
Okay.
And I'm saying, holy crap, you want to get that off the ground?
Yeah.
And you want to get it up to 20,000 miles an hour? Nowadays, when I fly in an airplane or take a cruise, take a step back. Look at that airplane. Look at that cruise ship. That's one big sucker. And you want this thing to move? And so it is amazing that, and commercialization of power is something, you talk about these electric airplanes, it takes weeks to, go from one end of the country to the other end of the country with one person on board. But airlines are moving billions of people. And, the 50,000 merchant ships are moving products all over the world. And, we got 8 billion people. We basically, now we need to keep them running just to maintain the livelihood and health and well-being of those people. And so it's, I think it's wishful thinking, but I would love to be on the other side debating some of these people that want to go green.
I did think I read some stat about how to replace the fossil fuel that's on a big jet airliner with a battery, the battery would have to weigh something like 3.5 million pounds. And there's no way to get the plane to take off if you have a battery that weighs that much. Have you heard anything about that? Yeah.
Well, the heavier the vehicle, the more power it takes to get it off the ground.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Basically, it gets worse and worse. And then you may just have enough to get off the ground and be landed.
So thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you and Ronald Stein, and hope to talk to you again later. All right.
Energyliteracy.net. That's my books, my articles. Send me an email, put you on the list. And
I'll put I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, Tom, have a great day and a great
Yeah.
week.
Okay, you too.